And we'll take a look at Canada at the Gold Cup as well. Of course, they have the group stage coming up that starts in Vancouver against Honduras next Tuesday. Then they face El Salvador and Curaçao in Houston to wrap up the group stage. Already a roster change for Canada from the initial roster. Sam Adekubi, a torn Achilles. His season is done for the Vancouver Whitecaps, and Zorhan Basong, who impressed in that first game against Ukraine at the Canadian Shield, is onto the roster. I found it a little bit strange that he wasn't on the roster but was on this Canadian Shield one before. And that seems to be like what Christian Pulisic wanted to do with the U.S., but not to go down that route. But just heartbreaking for Sam Adekubi to pick up another significant injury. And you kind of have to think about whether maybe that's the last time he's in a Canadian shirt, if, given all the variabilities of returning from an injury like this.
Yeah, well, I think for Sam Adekubi, I think first and foremost, you think about him during this recovery just because he's had such a rough few years personally, club level, and then for the national team ever since Jesse Marsh come in. Like, these were his first 2 games at the Canadian Shield, and he played well in both. Like, it was a nice reminder of, this is why we've been waiting to see him play, because every time he'd come close to making a squad or Copa America, there'd just be something that would get him. Because of that, I won't rule him out. Like, I know from in terms of his mentality, he wants to be on that World Cup team so bad. You can see it the way he works to be involved in every Canadian squad, even if he's up against an injury. But man, it's going to be tough. The one thing working in his favor is Canada's left back depth is kind of up in the air. And, we'll have to see how Alphonso Davies recovers, how he recovers. I guess this will offer a lot of chance for Basong in the near time. You have to imagine we see a Luca Petrasso in the fall. If he continues to hit a good stride with Montreal, I'm sure there'll be some other left backs that emerge throughout the year in MLS and in Europe. Raheem Edwards is always around as a good, capable option if you need. But you look at all those guys, I could see a reality where Adekubi comes back. Maybe this extended injury break is what he needs to just, throw all these health concerns behind him. So prayers up for the recovery, and hopefully it goes as well as possible. So good news is guys like Kevin Durant showed, like an Achilles in your 30s, like 10, 20 years ago was, career ender. And I think now there's still hope that you can recover and still come back at a good level.
And with the results against a very strong Ivory Coast team and Ukraine, CF opponents and UEFA opponents that are at the top of those levels. UEFA, of course, not Ukraine's, elite position, but still a good UEFA team. Did this raise your expectations for the Canadian men's national team at the Gold Cup? I know you already wrote that it should be expectation and standard for them to win the thing.
Yeah, that was my expectation last week on the show as well. They should go out and win. They should at least, embrace the pressure of being a team that should go out to win. And I think they have. Like Jesse Marsh has said, I think it was to TSN about a week ago. He was like, for us, if you don't win the Gold Cup, it's going to be a massive disappointment. And he's continued to hint at that. And because they know this is the last step that they need, right? Like, they're in form. They're beating good teams. They're competing against good teams. But they just need that psychological lift of winning a Gold Cup. Because for me, again, I think a trophy like this just cements what your status as a best team in the region. Like, I think if Mexico goes out and wins this Gold Cup, they're clearly the best, right? I think if you look at Mexico, if Canada wins this, all of a sudden Mexico wins the Nations League, Canada wins the Gold Cup. It's a 1A, 1B thing. Right now, the U.S., that's a whole other discussion we might have on another show. So for Canada, they just need to go out and win it for what this group, like these guys, Jonathan David needs to lift that trophy. Stefan Ustaken needs to go out and lift that trophy. Alistair Johnson, all these guys need to know what it's like to lift that trophy. They've brought a squad. There's commitment. They've got all the boxes. They've got one of the best teams on paper. They have experience in this. Like, you go down and down. There's just every reason why they should go out and win the Gold Cup. So I would just say, go out and get it done, right? And even Mexico, I hope they face Mexico, because if they do, I think this would be the exact game they need to kind of lift that barrier psychological, just getting past Mexico. And man, it would be incredible if they were able to win it.
Yeah, I don't want to paint the Canadian men's national team in a Maple Leaf scenario, but they've still yet to get a statement result, right? Like, you can look at maybe tying France last year 0-0 as their biggest result yet, and they picked up good results, albeit maybe not that inspiring at the Copa America to get to a semifinal, and that's a big thing. But then they weren't able to beat a giant. And Jesse Marsh has spoken about that they're still looking for beating a giant, winning a trophy. They need something like that to give them that true belief heading into the World Cup. And this is the last opportunity to do so, at least with the trophy on the line. I'm sure that they'll line up some big opponents ahead of the World Cup, and they can get a boost by getting a result in that kind of scenario. But that's almost potentially tougher to get a result, and it doesn't mean as much as, winning a trophy, and a big trophy at that, because the size of the Gold Cup. I saw it this week. That thing is from my knee to my head. It's ridiculous. It's massive.
Yeah, I wonder if some of those guys will even be able to lift it. It seems like it's just as big as some of them, but no, it's huge. And another point is, like, Canada hasn't been in a Gold Cup final since they won it. They've been in one Nations League final. I think also just making it that far in the tournament and winning it would be huge, because how are you, if you at the World Cup again, we continue to say there's a world in which Canada can make a run to the quarters. I think quarters is where it starts to get, like, that's in the believability. Like, semis and finals, all that is possible, but it's Cinderella. Quarterfinals is like, you can talk me into it. If they're going to do that, it would fill me with a lot of confidence. Like, oh yeah, you won a Gold Cup. You went through your tournaments, the best in the region. You won. You showed that you can be the top dog in that scenario. If you don't, all of a sudden, I'm thinking quarterfinals. That's a bit of a too far of a bar to jump. So, and it showed, like, they're close to that quarterfinal bar. They made a semifinal of a Copa America. They were right up there in Nations League. They've drawn some very good teams, but just, again, that's why it's for me, it's, you talk about the team on paper. I have no doubt, like, a quarterfinal can be a very reasonable ceiling expectation. But as we know in football, especially international football, when you're playing giants, countries with decades, centuries of pedigree, it's the psychological aspect. And that's why winning a Gold Cup, I think, would really just change the trajectory, I think, of this team for the better.
There's also the point of navigating tournaments, because it's very different than navigating a single game and putting your best roster and playing well for 90 minutes. And say maybe you topple, a Brazil in a pre-World Cup friendly. Say that's an opponent that they get, and that would be a great ego boost. But that's not navigating a tournament. We saw this Canadian team navigate a tournament last year at the Copa America. That was fantastic preparation. And I remember asking Jesse Marsh at MetLife after they were eliminated that how important was it to navigate a tournament like this? And he said it was critical to not only get some bigger games, to get high pressure opponents, but to navigate a tournament and show that you can survive and advance through some of those tough situations. And I think that this is Canada's opportunity to really showcase that to a point of culmination as well. Take a trophy home. And they weren't even able to get a medal last time out, right?
Yeah, and to that point, just like injuries in a tournament, they suffer that at Copa America. What happens when a Tejan Buchanan goes down? The good news for Canada was, Schaffelberg's ready to step up, Ali Ahmed ready to step up. What happens if there's suspensions, right? This is why it's almost good that Moise Bombito's not here, because what if he gets a red card or 2 yellows in the group stage and you're missing him for a round of 32? That's football. that sort of stuff can happen. Tournaments, right? Tight turnarounds, fatigue, etc. So I think that's a really good point.
And we've seen coaches that are very good at doing that. I think of Gareth Southgate's England. It wasn't necessarily a fantastic watch or an entertaining team, but heck, they knew how to play a tournament. They would get through to a semifinal or a final quite often. They didn't win it, but they knew how to play a tournament. We'll get into the Canadian lineup as well. And we had a few questions from 1.9 is Duck CanMNT. Love the handle. Maybe change it to something a little bit simpler. But where does your best 11 stand right now? And we'll keep it Gold Cup. So no Davies and no Bombito in this one. I know you had a bit of a plan, and I tend to agree with pretty much all points of it.
Yeah, I think what I wrote down for this is I put Dane Sinclair in goal. I think he's got the slight edge right now. I think you see a back four of Nico Seeger, Luke DeFougerol, Derek Cornelius, Alistair Johnston at left back in the wake of Adekugbe's injury. I think this would have been different a few days ago. You go Eustachio Kone in the middle still, although Schwanier, again, I'll read it out. Eustachio Kone, then you got Buchanan, Ahmed on the wings, Promise David, Jonathan David up front. What I did write in the notes is there's a lot of still close battles that I think Jesse Marsh is going to want to inform himself of. Like Crépeau, Dane Sinclair is, for me, it's almost a wash, because like Crépeau was good against Ukraine. Dane Sinclair was good against Cote d'Ivoire, keeping a clean sheet. Both are good goalies. You're not you're not sitting there with one in net, be like, man, we really missed the other. Like it's 1A, 1B situation in the true sense of that. Richie Laryea, I think, is in this mix of healthier. I had him down originally. I'm thinking he's still only 45-minute fit as we learn at Canadian Shield. I think he's someone that we say this is a semifinal or a final. I want Richie Laryea starting. Joel Waterman as well put in a good shift. I think Luc de Fougerolles, this is just more me betting on his potential, so I wouldn't fault putting Waterman in. And of course, Mathieu Choinière, I think, has every shot to push into Malcone that hasn't fully looked comfortable. And I think the group stage without Eustáquio is going to be fascinating, because I think we're really going to see between Choinière, Kone, Saliba, and even Osorio who can step up and become the reliable Eustáquio partner. And then, of course, on the wing, like there's Jacob Schaffelberg, who the nice thing is with Schaffelberg, Buchanan, Ahmed is, even if you pick two, one's going to come off the bench and do well. Whereas if you're talking midfield, if you're talking the back line, there's less of that, because that's not really what you're thinking of. So I think the winger situation I'm less worried about. And then, of course, up front, let's let a double David in this tournament.
And of course, Canada with three opponents that aren't necessarily up to the level that they've been playing recently. They open up the tournament in Vancouver against Honduras. And then I believe it's Curaçao on match day 2. And Canada won't have Jesse Marsch on the sidelines for these two first games. He mentioned that he wouldn't actually mind the opportunity to watch some of these games from higher up. And I remember the days when John Herdman would go up into the stands and watch part of a game, even when he wasn't suspended, from higher up, just to get a bit of a tactical view. But let's start with Honduras. When you're looking at this, how does Canada line up against Honduras? How do they fare against Honduras? How do they fare with the home crowd in Vancouver, who Jesse Marsch urged Vancouver fans to get out as well after some disappointing crowds in Toronto? And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bit of a disappointing crowd in Vancouver as well.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. I mean, we didn't really get into it in terms of the Shield, but obviously it was not a great look in terms of the crowd. But also, it's just, again, we continue to say it, people don't realize the challenges of how these games should be not marketed necessarily, but sold. And again, it's always a tough sell for, like, as much as we want to believe that Canada is so much of a soccer country that you're paying $100 tickets, and it shouldn't be like that. I'm just saying this from the perspective of those doing it. Tickets should be cheaper. They should be cheaper. I'm saying that from my heart, but also from, if you want these stadiums to be full, that's a whole other discussion. But in terms of Honduras themselves, I'd say this is probably the toughest matchup on paper in this Gold Cup, and not in terms of like level. I think Curaçao is slightly better, but I think this is like the hardest matchup, because I think Honduras is just going to give them the most heck, for a lack of a better word, and just muck the game up, play 4-4-2, jam it up. You look at the roster, like you just see vets who know CONCACAF, who even know this Canadian team. Davy Flores, of course, teammates with a few of them. You got Luis Palma, former teammate of Alistair Johnston at Celtic. He's moved on. You got Kervin Arriaga, Joseph Rosales, who's in MLS, Dane Sinclair's teammates. You got Romel Kyoto, who knows a few of these Canadian guys. Lozano up front, Anthony Lozano. You got Lopez, the veteran number 10. Maldonado used to play for LAFC. Like, these guys are just familiar faces. I don't expect them to be too different from teams we've seen in the past few years. I expect it to be direct. I expect it to be physical. And I think this will be a good test for Jesse Marsch's team, because they've struggled a bit against sides who play a bit that way.
And El Salvador, no Nathan Ordaz in this El Salvador team, which does make a bit of a difference considering the form he's had with LAFC this year.
Yeah, that was probably the big one that stood out, just seeing he was left out. Of course, Club World Cup ends up impacting, and that's too bad, because for El Salvador, you look at the squad, just a lack of overall quality. They got a lot of guys playing in El Salvador. I think it's something crazy, like over 20 of the guys in the team. There are some interesting players beyond Ordaz. The striker Hill looks pretty good. He's been leading the line, has been getting some goals. And then the number 10, Dwayne Yass, fun one. He's like playing in Finland, I think it is. And he's kind of one of those guys that, like, El Salvador Twitter soccer fans were clamoring for. When I searched his name, I saw some fun tweets. So a bit of a unique flavor to it. Otherwise, very strong local El Salvador roster. But for what it's worth, their coach is the old Honduras boss from the Octo. Or I don't know if you remember when Jonathan David scored that goal, and there's like the shot of him almost crying. It's him. So he'll know Canada very well. So I expect, much like Honduras played in that game, El Salvador switched from a bit of a back three to more of a back four since he's arrived. So much like Honduras, I expect kind of a 4-4-2 muck it up game, but just maybe less veteran experience, maybe less quality to expose Canada than against Honduras.
And lastly, there's Curaçao. That's going to be the third game. Jesse Marsh comes back onto the sideline for that one. Always a bit of a wild card, this Curaçao team. You never really know how they're going to play. Of course, quite a few players playing in the Eredivisie, coming from Dutch heritage, that I do like this Curaçao team to advance from the group. And we'll get into our predictions after, but what do you see in this matchup?
Yeah, no, I think Curaçao is such a wild card. I mean, they were the pot 4 team. And just to side note, because we did have this backwards, Canada plays Curaçao second, so El Salvador will be the decider. Always a bit weird, but yes, pot 4 team. But again, I've been bullish on them before, so that's just, again, you see the dual nationals, it's tough because you see the quality, but as you know, it's about time. But at the same time, they've had time. Like, this is a group that's now, it's been 6 years since they made that run to the quarters at the 2019 Gold Cup. They were in Nations League A for a bunch of years in a row. They've played teams like Canada, etc. They're having a phenomenal World Cup qualifying run, 4 wins to start. I think they're one of the genuine favorites to make the World Cup from CONCACAF. So, like, you just look at their team. Like, they got Dick Advocaat, the coach, the legend, the Dutch coach who's, coached at the highest of levels. You look at the roster, you got the guys like the Bacunia brothers who are still kicking. They got Jurgen Locadia, who was at Cincinnati a few years ago, and I think he was like, what was it, PSV Eindhoven not long back. The one guy that stood out was this young midfielder, CanMNT. He plays in Juventus's academy. Like, they got some fun guys in this team, and they like to play with the ball. They know how to play with the ball. I think they're going to adjust, of course, because you know how Canada is against teams like that. They're going to press and make it uncomfortable, but they definitely feel like the team with the most quality on paper, but they also got the experience that we maybe don't see from some of these teams that are loaded with dual nationals.